We're all set. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I will call our first meeting of the session to order. The Senate Standing Committee on Crime Victims, Crime and Correction. I'm Senator Pat Gallivan. Senator Ruth Hassel Thompson is the ranking minority member, and Senator Gustavo Rivera has joined us as well. And we do have voting sheets from the rest of the members of the committee, with the exception of Senator Little, who is at that press conference as well and should be joining us shortly. We have just a few items on the agenda. I believe every office, we have our report from last year that I believe was delivered to every office. Committee report last year. Senator Griffo has just joined us. So, and we have more available if any of the members of the committee would like them, whether they're passing them out to any of their constituents.
Could I register a complaint?
Yeah.
Pictures time.
No, it's not that. It's just that my other chairman, for whom I rank, gave me name coverage on the cover page.
Do we know that? I'm sure that will happen next year. And I'm just kind of curious what happened last. Let's see. Well, I don't know why we didn't do it last year either. Duly.
Well, that's why I commented.
No, duly noted and not even.
But it's on the
Duly
inside.
noted.
But it's on the inside page.
It is. I got it.
I like taking pictures of the cover pages and sending them to my aunt, who's 100 years old.
Well, I will tell you.
She's very, no, I'm serious. She's very impressed by stuff like that.
Senator, we will look to see if we can do a reprint with that correction, because we only did a small quantity.
No.
Well, we have them available. Well, if we...
You could do the redesign and just send it.
Well, here's what we'll do. If there are more requests for this, and we run out of the supply, then when we print, we want to get an additional supply, we will do that.
All right, thank you. You're so accommodating. You see that, Joe?
Like this guy.
What you're talking about next? We'll see about that. If I can just comment on the budget hearings, we have it's interesting, we don't have a lot of bills before the committee, we have a short agenda today. But there's a lot that is happening that falls under the umbrella of the committee. Some of you heard me say at the budget hearing, in part, I'm very frustrated with the progress or lack of progress from the administration on a number of different things, and the non-responsiveness of the commissioner, not all this fault, because that delivery of the Inspector General report that has not completed yet the investigation of Clinton Correctional, and I think that holds up some of our work, waiting to see what the recommendations are. I had contemplated, I had many discussions with the governor's office, with other members about potentially conducting hearings or potentially bringing something before the committee regarding not just the escape, but the larger issue. Senator Little is joining us as well. The larger issue of increased assaults in facilities, which include inmate assault, record high 4 years in a row. Inmate on staff assault, record high 4 years in a row. And the highest level of contraband ever 4 years in a row has continued to increase. Coupled with a letter that the commissioner sent out in April to all inmates, which I must say is very responsible of them to talk about the dangers of K2 and what's happening to inmates. They ask them to consider their families, and they're all talking about that. But by the same token, and an acknowledgement of the failures of the system, getting it out, and begging the question of, so what to do about it? And I think all of it is kind of just hanging out there, awaiting the Inspector General report. We want to interfere with any investigation. We want to see what they put forward. The Commissioner testified acknowledging many of these things and talked about putting forward some changes to deal with a number of the different things, especially the contraband. He didn't get specific, it was in general terms. So those are issues. Senator Akshar joining us as well. Issues that are...
Whose district is Clinton?
Senator Clinton. So I think those are issues that are potentially before us, or things that obviously are ready for discussion this year. However, I think we have to wait until that report comes out. before we start to deal with it.
Any indication of how long the Inspector General's analysis or
No,
investigation?
and what we're led to believe, so it started in Clinton, but it will include recommendations system-wide. And they're in the process of a number of different things right now in corrections again. The Commissioner alluded to some of them, but it was very hard. Many of you asked questions. He didn't get into much detail in different things. They got a revamping of what was their, I forget what it was called, but their own internal affairs, their own inspector general. He talked about a revamping of that. They're in the process of that. And before we even approach the issue of raise the age, they're in the process of complying with federal prison rape elimination act that requires the separate housing of 16 and 17-year-olds from 18-year-olds, and doing that at Mid-Hudson. And again, there's some money for construction in the budget, some money for additional staff in the budget for it. So those are all things that, again, swirling around without a lot of concrete answers. And they're not providing what, like I said, right for us as we move forward. Is there any comments from anybody? And
Yes.
Or additional?
Yeah, Patrick, there's a couple things. You know, I've been talking with the commissioner, and before he became the acting commissioner, about the incidences at Clinton. I get probably the greatest number of letters about inmate and pictures of the condition of some of the inmates and what's happening to them inside. And until this happened, it was very interesting to me that after the governor went up to Clinton and started taking a look, he had this epiphany suddenly of how bad things really, really were from every perspective. And I guess I just kind of get frustrated. I started to say resent, but that's a little bit too strong. But I get very frustrated because these are things that the signals have been there for a very long time in terms of the need to do reform. But there has been, to my mind, a somewhat prevailing behavior and an attitude that when they go to prison, whatever happens to them is acceptable. And I think that that's unacceptable. Because I always approach it from the perspective that too large a number of these people, when they're released, are coming back to my district. And I don't want them to be like bears in a cage where people have just poked the hell out of them, and all they're good for is either to go back to prison or they terrorize communities when they come home, because that's all they know. And there is kind of we always think of veterans in a very sacred kind of way, but the same thing happens to people who have been in prison. That post-traumatic syndrome is just as much there for them, and we're not addressing that from a health perspective. And also the other piece that we don't address in this committee is the aging, which you heard me address in terms of not just those that are terminally ill and could be medically released, because I've been doing a study on the medical release, but 58% of those who are in the medical units are over the age of 55 and have long-term chronic diseases, and we're spending an additional $130,000 per person to care for them in those facilities, as opposed to having them be somewhere else and not on our, on our dime. And we're not doing nearly enough we're not doing anything about prevention. So when you tell me about K2, it's very, that's only symptomatic of other kinds of things. We talked about it when I first came here about HIV and AIDS, because I had, my last job before coming to the Senate was a coordinator on services on people with HIV and AIDS. And we were aware that those coming out of prison were the ones creating new infections. And so it was very difficult for us to look at the educational money we were spending on HIV and AIDS and then not address the population in prison who were infected, who were transmitting the disease in prison and then bringing that out into the broader community. So I mean, there are just some some overlap between the health committee and this committee in terms of how are we going to really address the cost of people who are in prison, those who should be eligible for medical release. How do we change the process to give the power to the commissioner and to the medical director to make determinations about who is so terminally ill that they no longer pose a threat to public safety and can in fact be released, as opposed to the process, because most of them die in prison while they wait for a chance to go before the board of parole and whatever. And the process, I'm just talking about the process.
Was there changes in the past couple of years?
No.
It seemed the commissioner testified about
When he
that.
testified, he said that in some of the instances, he's tried to use his discretion in terms of how he tries to expedite it, but he lost 2 people in the wait while it had to wait for a board to make the approval. And that the medical director should have the last say, as opposed to the board in terms of the actual condition. And the condition of the person should be up to the medical director, not to the board, to make that determination. And that's some of the problems.
Senator Little?
Yeah, I think, I know with the mentally ill, a lot of money has been spent on trying to deal with the inmates who are incarcerated and who have mental illness problems. And I think that separate areas and all kinds of programs. But I do think that as we get into all these other areas, one of the things that has fallen off the table somewhat are the work release programs. And I think that they serve a lot of value for inmates to learn how to hold a job, to respond to someone, to take directions, and have some responsibility. But I do think that some of the crowding, some of the double bunking that is taking place in some of our cells, Great Meadows, they were 2 in the cell, that has been changed, so they are now single cells. And I think that there have been improvements made. And certainly, in the instance of Clinton, this was a prison that there had never been an escape from. And whether you're just not looking for it, or you just don't expect it, a neighbor within hundreds of feet from the walls of the prison saw 2 men in the yard with hooded sweatshirts on right around midnight, and it didn't occur to him they could have been escapees. He would report it to anybody.
Right.
So it wasn't discovered until in the morning when they had to stand up for a bed check, because they're not allowed to wake them up from that last bed check 10 or 11 at night until 5 o'clock in the morning. So a lot of circumstances, and I think that probably the biggest answer was this was totally unexpected that anyone could ever do this. And we found out it wasn't. But there's a lot of people that have worked very hard since, and I'm sure and hope that the investigation will be fair and moving forward. We've had enough time to
Hopefully soon. We'll see. On the issue of work release, the governor included a very small item in the budget. He talked a little bit about work release and exploring some, in his words, statutory changes to parole. But we don't have any specifics. And I don't know what he can accomplish by himself, just through their own policy, or what needs to be
Well,
statutory,
there's some
especially in
cases
area
where the person
workers.
actually leaves the prison and goes to work and comes back and works in the private sector, whether it's.
Well, I'm familiar with the
or-
program, but
Yeah, and
but
then
we
they
haven't
get
seen the
half
governor's.
of the salary that they make, and then they have to go
In his book, in the book,
You mean the book?
the paperback.
Oh, you mean the budget, the paper?
The initial one. There's some narrative in there
You talking about his
about,
book?
there's some
You
narrative.
wanted to
in there
read the
about-
book?
No, it's not out paperback. This is a paperback budget book. I forget.
Ah, okay.
Rising, or whatever it was called. But there's not even a paragraph. But it alludes to looking at different things with parole and.
One of the
some
things that I
statutory
know that
changes.
I have been in discussion with a group of people with him has been when we closed, we had this conversation when we closed McGregor and when we closed a couple of the other work
Oh, Camp
release.
Gabriel's.
Gabriel, I keep saying McGregor, but I mean Gabriel.
That was a transition.
That was a transition.
That was-
And the reason that we did was because they said that the numbers of inmates that qualified was so small. That's why they closed.
Because it was a minimum security.
Right,
facility with
Gabriel,
benefits.
but the same thing was true of Fulton Street. Those, and we held on to both of those for as long as we could because we were trying to get the legislature to look at broadening the definition of who was eligible. But everybody was so scared to even go back and explore it that by the time we did begin to look at it, half those prisons were closed, including Gabriel. Because I tried, you know that.
Well,
we tried
Chateau
to-
was built in 1990,
90.
and it's a great facility, it's a good drug and alcohol facility. And, you know, today, one of the things that has been adopted is allowing inmates to FaceTime with family. And I had called and gotten permission for someone, the mother, to be able to FaceTime a child who was only a year and a half to have some relationship, because she would be getting out within, a year or something. And that was allowed. It was, but they looked at it and decided that this can be more widespread. And when people ask, that'll keep them in better contact. So even though Chateauguay's a long ways away from New York City, where many come from, some come from other cities, and a lot come from my area to go to the facilities too. It still would have been a great facility to keep open. But the whole thing is making sure that they're safe, making sure that they're aren't so crowded, that the correction officers have the ability to really supervise and see what's going on all the time.
If I
That's
may.
difficult.
Oh, excuse me.
I know.
So you see, there's a lot of things that are right for us to discuss and or take action on as we move forward. But there's a codes committee meeting as well, and there are several of our members who are on our committees. So if we can move to the bills that are before us. We have 8 before us. The very last one I am going to hold, and that will not be for us today. All 7 of these bills were before the committee last year and passed through the committee, and I think most of them, if not all of them, were voted on by the entire Senate. Yeah, all of them also passed the Senate as well. It was before. Which one? With the exception of 1583. So anyway, these are not new bills, and they're before us now. The first one is Senate Bill 22, sponsored by Senator Lavelle, and it's an act to amend the correction law. Is there a motion to report?
Make a motion.
Second?
Yep.
Any negative votes? Senator Hassel Thompson in the negative. The bill is reported. Senate bill.
And I can't tell you why. I can't tell you why. I voted no every time. I don't know why.
It might-
Something in the bill, but
There might, I know that there's a, and I know that we're gonna have a couple, at least another one that's a sex offender bill. And I know that there's some opposition that I've had to some of them because there's no distinction between levels.
that's what it
When we
is.
limit.
That's what, that is what it is. Thank you. I keep forgetting, but every time I read it, I know why, but
Next on the agenda, Senate Bill 449, sponsored by Senator Marcelino, and that is an act to amend the executive law. Motion to report.
second.
We have a motion and a second. Any negative votes? The bill will be referred to finance, rather. Next on the agenda is Senate Bill 712, sponsored by Senator Lavella, an act to amend the correction law.
So,
Second. Yeah.
Second by Senator Little. Any negative votes?
No.
And Senator Little, did you?
Well, going back to Senator Lavalle's bill, it was for level 2 and level 3 sex offenders.
Okay, excuse me 1 second. 712 is reported. Senator Little.
Just going back to Senator Lavalle's bill, this for level 2 and level 3 sex offenders.
but there was also a fiscal
As
note.
well.
I think there was also a fiscal.
They're going to help pay the schools for all these notifications that they have to send out.
Right.
Senate Bill 833, sponsored by Senator Robach, is an act to amend the correctional law, penal law, and executive law in relation to level 3 sex offenders. to prohibit level 3 sex offenders from living in college housing.
So,
Do we have a motion to report in a second? Any negative votes? That bill is reported. Senate Bill 1583, sponsored by Senator Mazzolio, an act to amend the correction law in relation to permitting correction officers to be colorblind.
Move the bill.
Motion to report, Senator Little, second. Senator Rivera. Any negative votes? Senator Hassel-Thompson reported.
I'm consistently negative on this one.
That bill is reported. Next on the agenda, Senate Bill 1943, sponsored by Senator Golden, an act to amend the correction law in relation to prohibiting registered sex offenders from working with children. Motion to report.
I have just a quick comment. I will be voting negative on this one. And again, for the record, not because I do not think that we need to establish restrictions as far as where sex offenders work or where they live, etc., but because there is a distinction between the levels of sex offenders when they're released, and this one makes no such distinction, unlike many of the other bills that we voted on today. So I'm voting negative on this one for that reason.
Okay, we need a motion to report first. Senator Akshar, second. Senator Little. Senator Rivera in the negative.
Yeah, I was hesitant. I voted without rec for the same reason. I voted without rec.
Senator Hassel-Thompson without rep. That bill is reported. Just as a note, I haven't done this in the last couple of years, but I think because that continues to come up, as we look at these new bills that come forward, the different members that are putting forward, we'll just make a note that we'll try to let them know that the committee consistently raises the distinction. I mean, they can choose to make a difference or not, but that always becomes up. Yes.
Because there have been some instances in the past, there have been bills which have been amended to just for level 3s or level 2s.
Understood. I know you consistently made that.
Yeah, both on the floor and here in the committee.
Okay, our final bill on the agenda, Senate Bill 3818, sponsored by Senator
Oh, so
Hassel-Thompson.
you're skipping yours?
No.
You're skipping, you said the last one on the agenda, so the Gallivan one we're not going to do?
We're holding that one.
Oh, we
Yeah,
are?
it's gonna hold.
Oh, I didn't know.
So 3818, sponsored by Senator Hassel-Thompson, an act to amend the correction law in relation to the subpoena power of the Commissioner of the Department of Correctional Services. Motion to report.
Move the bill.
Senator Rivera, Senator Little, second.
Yeah, just a question, does it have to be 5 days ahead of time? At some point, they get notice that this personal records being looked at.
Right.
Any negative votes? That bill is reported, and again, 4904, I hold it. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
By everybody. Second. Have a good break, everybody. We stand adjourned.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
No, I'll be right back.
Ready to go to the next one?
I want to introduce you guys, because I forgot to at the beginning. Started at work today. You know, these were the ones we've done in the past. It wasn't, so as we start moving into that more.
Right.
Hold on. Thanks for being here.